Hello?
Yep,
Does that sound any better?
it does. You're a little quieter, which is maybe why I thought the other one sounded good, but much less overdriven.
Yeah.
Don't sound like you're talking through a Jimi Hendrix fuzz. It's a little.
Trying to think of the right Jimi Hendrix.
It's a
little
little
Purple
guitar.
Haze, if you will.
Little guitar joke for you there, Phil.
Yes.
Purple Haze isn't actually that fuzzy, is it? More like Voodoo Child.
Mm-hmm.
Or Foxy Lady. Whereas I sound like Jimmy's guitar on Hey Joe. Nice and clean.
Yep.
Let's make this a Jimi Hendrix podcast. That would be fun. All right, folks. Welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm Connor Rebush. That's Phil McKenzie.
Yo.
That's a good choice, Phil. A one-syllable greeting.
Given your computer's propensity to try and cut me off.
It's not my
only
computer.
assume It is your computer. It would presumably just change it to O.
Oh, I thought that's what you said.
Something like that. I said yo.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding.
God damn you, Connor.
Now next time when I introduce
you... me this entire time.
Now next time when I introduce you, you got to give me a oh! Give me one of those. Welcome. This is Heavy Hands. And I suppose we have some fights to talk about. We came up with a brilliant idea, which if you listen to all of last week's episode, you will know that at the very end, Phil realized we'd forgotten to talk about Francis Ngannou, Anthony Joshua. So we're going to talk about that later today on this episode. But we are also smack dab in the middle of two UFC Apex cards, between which there are, at least 3 fights of moderate interest.
Whoa.
So I know. We're living in these are the salad days, Phil. Times of plenty. So coming up next week, which we're going to start today's show off with, an actually good main event. I have no complaints about this. Amanda Hebush versus Rose Namajunas, an interesting contenders fight at women's flyweight. Former strawweight champion Rose Namajunas made, I thought, a credible showing in her flyweight debut, but had a horribly, gruesomely dislocated finger very early into the fight. So it's tough to say exactly what we can expect out of her going forward at 125. And of course, Amanda Hebush has been kicking around at 125, being clearly one of the best and most exciting fighters in the division for several years now. So it's a cool main event. I like it. Otherwise on the card, there's not a lot. But hey, at least last week's card had not a lot.
I mean, people got finished.
Yeah.
And that was good both from the, perspective of people watching it to be exciting, but also good for the people watching it who wanted these fights to be over quickly. Mm-hmm. I'm glad we didn't have to watch 5 rounds of Tuivasa versus Tybura.
That's true. That's optimism right there, Phil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was thinking of things people got finished more in a Rodney Dangerfield sense.
Yeah.
Before I watched Tybura Tuivasa, I was incomplete. Now I'm finished, right? But there was some stuff, particularly of interest to me because he's quickly become one of my guys, and also I just thought it was far and away the best, most exciting fight on the main card. Christian Rodriguez versus Isaac Dolgarian was a really cool fight. We will talk a little bit about Tybura Tuivasa. God knows why. Otherwise, just we'll see what we find, folks. But let's kick things off with Hebush Namajunas, and then maybe we'll talk about Ngannou Joshua and give you our thoughts on that. So, Phil, Rose Namajunas, 31 years old, but I swear she's been fighting since she was 18.
I think that's actually pretty accurate, right?
Yeah, she's been fighting since she was only 4 years into her relationship with Pat Barry.
Yep. Again, you're not saying anything. You're not exaggerating the truth here. These are simply facts that you are stating. You can consider putting them in a funny voice.
Yeah.
We've just been talking about Taika Waititi's incredible comic riffings in the film Free Guy.
Yeah. Which the listeners should know Phil qualified as quite a good movie.
No, I didn't.
Did you say pretty good?
I said it was perfectly fine outside of the excruciating bits.
Yeah, it's like when I go to the hospital for my dick smashing procedure. And I'm like,
yeah,
the magazines in the lobby were great.
Yeah, they brought you some like nice jelly as your hospital food, and the painkillers were of a high quality.
The morphine was fantastic.
Try and look at the experience as a whole, Connor.
Yeah,
it's always with the dick smashing.
Well, it is a whole now. All right, let's talk about it then. Rose Namajunas, Amanda Ribas. Yeah, I mean, how did you feel about Rose Namajunas' first foray into women's flyweight? What do you take away from that, if anything?
I mean, considering what we were thinking going into it, very promising.
Yeah.
Because obviously the main worry was after that Esparza fight. You're looking at a consistent head case who you're wondering has finally might have just fallen off the edge.
Yeah.
But as is the case, I think, with Rose Namajunas, as I think has happened after all of her catastrophic losses, she has a weird, rubbery resilience to her.
She does.
Like, she just comes back after something where you're just like, man, that looks terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Either whether it's in a variety of different ways. Whether it's getting, bullied by Karolina Kowalkiewicz or dropped on her own head, or just having the worst fight in the world. And she mostly just seems to come back and kind of be rejuvenated by the failure.
Yeah. And if anything, this is now 2 in a row, one of which barely counts as even a fight, but it is officially a loss. And I don't know how much, I don't want to go all Tom Aspinall mode here and become a body language expert. But as far as I could tell, she seemed quite happy after the fight with Manon Fiorot.
Uh-huh.
She seemed very calm and almost relieved and not stressed out. And I think honestly she has enough reason to feel good about her performance because she suffered a really gruesome injury. I don't know if anyone out there listening has seen the picture of Rose Namajunas' hand from immediately after the fight. Her pinky is going in 5 different directions. It's really gross. Mm-hmm. And she fought through that. She picked up the 3rd round on 2 judges' scorecards with good reason. And that indicates another thing that seems like it may change either as she continues to gain experience and mature, or as she continues to fight at a higher weight class, that Rose has always been, I think, a bit of a bully. I think more than physical differences, that is a big part of some of the huge swings that have preceded her losses, where the other person just refuses to go away. They don't respect her power or her submission skills or whatever, and they just start to bully her. And we've seen her crumble in that way before. We also know, as you've pointed out many times, Phil, that she tends to start really hot, and then for the last 3 rounds of a 5-round fight, it seems like she has 2 minutes of cardio per round.
Yep.
She really starts to slow down and tire out, and she'll get a rest and recover, and she can come out and push again. But once she has lost the sort of overwhelming edge she often has at the very start of a fight, she just kind of looks tired and slightly defeated, like she goes into a bit of survival mode. And that looked like that problem might have been somewhat resolved against Fiorot, because she pushed like a maniac in round 3. She was really aggressive, even though she was fighting with only one hand, and definitely, I think, exceeded Fiorot's pace by a pretty good margin in that round. So I think that's, all things considered, a pretty decent look for her at women's flyweight.
Yeah.
I got to agree.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking to someone, who's been mentally flaky, who had like a very consistent fight with a huge reason to quit being present the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
If not to, actually quit, then at least to sort of go into, Anthony Smith versus John Jones, like, survival mode, but who just pushed through it the whole time. And someone who's had serious problems being, like, physically bullied up against a, very big, powerful strawweight, like flyweight.
Flyweight,
yeah. I mean, admittedly, part of that is a style thing. Fiorot wasn't initiating clinches on her own. Wasn't really forcing, like, physical exchanges quite so much. But still, Namajunas did not really fade out of that fight at all.
Yeah, she was happy to be on the back foot. And that is always a good thing for Rose. When she gets to walk somebody down, she's a lot more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I mean, she looked relatively fresh and like she could maintain whatever pace she needed to maintain at 125. And I think that is a very big thing for her, even if it does mean that likely she's going to be even more prone to getting overpowered in this division. Because she didn't look big compared to Fiorot. That much is true. She looked a full weight class below her.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm pretty interested to see how she bounces back in this fight with Hibash. And one thing I will say just off the bat, and this will sort of inform my gut pick, which, as listeners of the show will know, only picks I ever get right. My gut pick does say that Amanda Hibash is far too hittable to be safe against Rose Namajunas. She tends to come in very square. She doesn't really have any head movement, and she really just tries to make up with offense what she lacks in defense, which is to say everything.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of room for Rose Namajunas to run her into some really sharp, really fast, straight shots in this fight.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit like the Ioane and Jacek thing. Mm-hmm. Is that Hibash's defense is simply being, like, long and active.
Yeah.
And Rose is just really good at getting past that kind of thing. Covers a lot of distance, very tricky covering distance, in that kind of Robert Whittaker kind of way, where she's going to be leaping in behind either the jab or she's going to be slipping as she does it and then coming with the left hook.
And just good
defense.
Yeah, and good positioning.
She draws out reactions with timing, with feints, before she does it.
Yep. Good positioning, very good lateral movement from Rose, always cutting angles, making you adjust to her, trying to get around your lead hand with her own. And doing that with, as you said, a healthy output of feints. Sort of like Sean O'Malley, she really has, 3-4 things she wants to hit you with most of the time. Mm-hmm. Jab, left hook, right hand, and then I suppose there's some front kicks and high kicks in there. But she has a lot of different ways of getting these shots in. Rose has an excellent lead right, for example, which is really tricky. She will sort of let you walk into her, and if you do it too square, the lead right is just going to drop on your chin with no telegraph. The jab is excellent. The left hook comes off the jab. The left hook comes particularly well off of her right hand, when she does a great job of dropping back out of range as she fires it. That is how she blasted Ioana Jędrzejczyk in their fight, and she caught her with the same shot a couple times in their rematch. So yeah, just a nice, like, basic boxer. Doesn't throw a lot of combinations, Rose, it has to be said. Very rarely more than 2 punches. I do think she has a tendency to really commit herself to whatever she sees as her power shot in the exchange, and she can get a little past her own feet, or a little too wide in her stance because she doesn't always like bring her back foot with her after she steps in. So I think in a GSP kind of way that limits her ability to actually keep a combination flowing. But as a sniper, very accurate, always throwing from the right angle, difficult to time. Each thing that you struggle to time sets up another thing that you will therefore struggle to time even more. A tricky, nuanced long-range boxer.
Yeah, and I'm looking at like Hibush and Jaroba at the moment, and there's a lot of Hibush basically like just following Jandiroba around the cage, struggling to cut her off.
Yeah.
Again, like she can be like a genuinely very potent,
yes,
and quite sort of 3-dimensional fighter. But she's got like a good clinch. She's a solid grappler. And yeah, she's an accurate, dangerous striker who can keep a good pace. But yeah, the defense and the need to be insulated from her reach. I mean, it was her fight against Mackenzie Dern, wasn't it? Where she was the first person to just absolutely smoke Dern.
Yep.
And
mostly
strand
because
her at distance and just jab her up.
Yep.
But you know that Jandiroba fight, and also the fight against Macy Barber, kind of show what the actual flaws are, because either she can't stop herself from being drawn into chasing, and she's looking to cut when she's looking to go after someone who's just trying to move away from her. And yeah, she's got no defense to stop either the level changes from Jandiroba or to stop herself from getting into just a silly brawl with Macy Barber. Because as far as I remember, she was winning the Barber fight quite comfortably.
Yeah.
And then she hurt Barber quite badly, and then just got dinged, like trying to finish her, and that was it.
Yep.
And then just got barbered.
Yeah, and Barber is not like that much better a technical striker than Mackenzie Dern. I mean, she is.
No.
Don't let me disparage her too much. She is. It doesn't take much, but she is better.
Yeah, not that much. She is basically just a big swinger.
Yeah.
With a surprisingly crafty high kick, which I think is what set it all off.
Yeah.
So they're just like banging in the pocket, and then Barber flicks up a head kick that stuns.
But she's simply a lot more considered than Mackenzie Dern. Like, she is not so prone to just flying forward as her only way to get strikes in. Mm-hmm. She can actually stay at range, and so at a certain point, Hibush just stopped getting like free shots off on her and started to get countered. And if you have any ability to counter, you are going to hit Hibush really clean. Any ability to counter, if Rose does manage to put Hibush on the back foot, I think Hibush will be in trouble for as long as that is happening. Because not only is her just defense in like a static position basically non-existent, but her footwork pretty much takes away her ability to like stand her ground or come back with good counters. Once she's got a little Barboza in her that you can get her to just kind of fly around with her, and she can't settle her feet until you stop chasing her. Obviously the big avenue, I would say that the two big avenues for Hibush into this fight are pace. Like, she has been knocked out, but she is super tough, and unless you put her out, you are not going to slow her down. She is capable of being really aggressive and fighting at a very high pace. And if there's, this is a 5-round fight, Rose has had plenty of those, but we have also seen her slow down in plenty of those after about round 2. And if Hibash can just keep pressing her, keep moving her backwards, and keep just firing every time Rose fires at her, then she could absolutely tire Rose out. And then her size might become an advantage, and that leads into the other obvious avenue she has, which is her wrestling. Rose is a good defensive wrestler. She tends to start from a really deep stance. She's good at digging her underhooks. Her footwork is good, so it's difficult to line up a really clean, straight shot on her to begin with. But I gotta think Hibash is stronger, because Rose has never been physically overpowering. Even when she was tying up with, in the brief tie-ups with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, of which there weren't many, Joanna looked stronger than her. She was never able to even come close to taking Joanna down, except for just a really well-timed shot at the very end of their second fight, which led to nothing, because it was pretty much immediately neutralized. So if Hibash can put Namajunas on the back foot and just attack her with a lot of wrestling and not get her face kneed off, which is something that Rose is actually pretty good at least one layer of meeting a takedown with a knee. That's what Rose has. And then if you just keep barging into her, she's gonna end up in trouble. But that I'm unsure of. I'm unsure if Hibash can just weather a storm, how Rose will actually just stop her from running her over ultimately. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's less than the wrestling. It's more just the clinch. She just has to tie up with her a bunch and just land knees and elbows. I think that for me, the thing is that it's that there are things that Hibash has done that I do not trust her to do with any consistency to actually win the fight.
Like what?
Combinations into low kicks. Did it at the end of the Jandiroba fight when she was chasing her down. Mm-hmm. It took her a long time to get confident on someone as, relatively impotent on the back foot as Jandiroba compared to Rose. But she did do it. She can do punches into low kicks. That is a good way to chase a willowy, mobile person out of the pocket. Mm-hmm. Secondly, clinching up with her. Just, work knees and elbows in close. She's a really dangerous clinch fighter, Hibash. Again, I think she likes the idea of herself as an outside, it's like an accurate outside striker. I like Jędrzejczyk. Who, when after that fight, we were just like, man, she could have won that if she just clinched more. But like that, I don't think she's going to do it. Also, I do think that actually wrestling exchanges in this are going to be dictated, at least in the beginning, by Namajunas. I think she's, in all her fights recently, she's been mixing up the attacks from the outside with level changes. Didn't work very well against Fiorot, because Fiorot's, huge and able to stop the wrestling, but I think that's probably going to work. It is one of those things where it's a question of whether taking Hibash down would be more detrimental to Rose's cardio than just fighting from the outside. But mostly from what I've seen, I think she's fine doing that. The Zhang fight, it worked out quite well for her. I think she can it. I can see ways for Hibash to win this fight. I just don't think she's going to do them.
Yeah, I just see it as that. I mean, I get that. It does feel like a way that things could go wrong, and exactly the way that really hurts Rose's psyche.
Yeah, but I 100% would have said that before the Wei Li Zhang fight.
Yeah.
You're gonna out wrestle Wei Li Zhang. That sounds stupid.
Yeah,
sounds incredibly stupid.
Yeah, because the trouble with Rose is Rose can, because she's got great timing. she can time a takedown really well. Things get hairy for her, I think, when the initial timing does not overwhelm the person's defenses, and then she ends up tied up with them in like a prolonged wrestling sequence, and that's when like physical strength becomes an issue, I think. And I think Rose is very much a fighter who likes a respite now and then in the fight, and I have seen her get in trouble more than once in the past for being like, okay, I've done a bunch of punching, I just slipped some shots, I countered, let's get the clinch, a very typical thing for MMA fighters. And then she's like not having a good time because what she wanted was to rest, and now she's in there with somebody who's usually just a bit stronger than her, and it's not a rest. She actually has to keep working and working even harder. But like I said, I liked what I saw out of her cardio and stick-to-itiveness in that Fiorot fight. And I really do kind of expect her to approach this one pretty aggressively. I think you're right. I think Hibash will probably let her. Will want to be, whatever her version of Slickster is. Will accept the back foot and will eat a lot of straight shots and probably a decent amount of kicks as well while she's doing that. So I'm going to pick Rose.
Yeah, kind of have to.
Yeah, it's my gut pick, so it can't be wrong.
Yep.
Look at how much gut I got. It's got to be right. It's got to be right. It likes Rose Namajunas and ice cream. All right, let's take a break there. When we come back, the big boys, Francis Ngannou, Anthony Joshua, and then the big boys, Tai Tuivasa, Marcin Tybura. After this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about some quote-unquote boxers. Am I right?
Hey. Francis Ngannou and Anthony Joshua have both comported themselves surprisingly well lately.
Yeah.
Why are they so-called boxers? What did they do to you?
Well, I like them both. Oh, God. Except for the part where I just watched the part of the clip where it cuts to Tyson Fury all smug and clapping in the audience like he didn't have an absolutely dog shit performance.
I mean, what else can he do in this kind of situation?
I know, yeah. So yeah, 3 weeks ago, whatever the hell it was now, Francis Ngannou had his second fight. Insane that a man should have his first and second fight against world championship level boxers. But that's what happened. And without taking anything away from what Francis Ngannou did against Tyson Fury, I do think this fight sort of feels like an admonishment of how poorly prepared Tyson Fury was for that fight.
Yeah, it is a damning indictment of Tyson Fury in that fight, and whatever mixture of factors made Tyson Fury look like that, he needs to do absolutely everything in his power to make sure that they don't happen again.
Yeah, I mean, go on.
Yeah, it could have been that he was, we said at the time, some mixture of him being probably getting a bit physically shot because he's been rubber banding up and down with his weight for years. Him not taking Ngannou seriously at all.
Yeah.
And him just being, generally Tyson Fury and a very mercurial guy. But yeah, this really did make him look very, very bad.
Yeah, and I think there was, as you said, some massive overconfidence that probably only enhanced his ability to do a terrible job of preparing. And yeah, the fact that even in the ring in that fight, he looked, I mean, like no more than 20 pounds shy of Paddy Pimblett. You know, he was absolutely swollen, and he looked like he rolled off the couch.
Yep.
And I think also just had a really, perhaps there's some style elements to this, but I would say also just a poor strategy. Because one of the major things that went wrong for Tyson Fury was that he kept trying to clinch Francis Ngannou, which is a part of his style normally against boxers. And against boxers, Tyson Fury is way better in close range than almost all of them, if not all of them. But, you know, Francis Ngannou is an MMA fighter. So, probably tying up with an MMA fighter who we have noted many times throughout his MMA career suddenly gets like really accurate when he's touching you.
Yep.
He has that kind of wrestler's instinct for landing his shots and out positioning people when they're actually tied up with him. And so yeah, I think part of it was stylistic, that Tyson Fury is just accustomed to out clinching, beating people in the clinch and in close range. And part of it was that he completely failed to recognize that maybe he should try to work around that distance against Ngannou. All of this is to say that what Anthony Joshua did against Ngannou was basically the textbook of British boxing. Footwork, jabs, setting up straight right hands. That was it.
Yep. I think, the difference between the approach from Fury on the outside against Ngannou and Joshua's was that Joshua was looking to land things.
Yeah.
Fury was looking to draw out reactions.
Yes.
So much of that fight was like Fury swatting at just in front of Ngannou to try and draw a counter out of him so that he could then counter it. And, and hand fighting with him. And then just like barreling forward into the clinch.
Yeah.
But he was never really looking to actually land his jab.
Yeah.
Whereas Joshua was he was just feinting, moving forward, and eventually he would actually land the jab. Whereas Ngannou was happy to just stand there, like, attempting to parry everything that came at him because Fury was never in range.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Joshua, on the other hand, actually stepped into range and, started hurting Ngannou, like, quite quickly.
Yeah, even before he was hurting him, he was just doing a really excellent job of constantly threatening with that lead hand. Stepping in, throwing it to the body. Also just like giving Ngannou looks in between actual jabs to make him worry about where it was coming from. Changing levels, taking a step to the side and then not throwing, taking 2 steps to the side, feinting, and then throwing the jab. This is the thing that boxers do that MMA fighters don't. Like, you know how Steve Erceg just got his title shot announced?
Mm-hmm.
He was asked in an interview this week, why are people with like boxing styles finding so much success right now in MMA? And Steve Erceg said, because MMA fighters make a ton of mistakes that are easy to exploit in boxing. And that's the truth. Like, this is why Sean O'Malley can just sidestep and jab Chito Vera for 5 rounds straight, obviously mixing other things in, but that's really the heart and soul of that performance is, what if I step this way and fire a jab down the middle, and Chito has no ability to even really to recognize the threat, except to develop a sort of vague sense of dread every time Sean O'Malley's lead hand moves. But he has no notion of like, okay, this position is one that I cannot let him get into. right? This is a position where somehow he's in range and I'm not because he has a good angle. And that means he can just touch me when he wants. And that's exactly the fight that Anthony Joshua had against Ngannou. He just constantly out-positioned him, constantly moved off to line his jab up, and the final 3 big right hands of the fight, one of which merely rattled Ngannou, one of which dropped him, and the other of which knocked him out. Actually, not the last one. The last one, he just stepped in and dropped a bomb on him because he was hurt.
Yeah, the last one, he was out on his feet before it landed.
Pretty much. The other 2, though, they both come on the heels of Ngannou stepping in with a left hook, which is simply out of range. He can't get close enough to land it because Joshua has gotten off not to a dramatic angle, but to just enough of an angle where he is facing Ngannou and Ngannou isn't really facing him. And so Ngannou steps in, he throws a shot. I mean, Ngannou has a weird long hook too. Like he can touch you at your jab range with that big sweeping hook. But because of the angle, the hook just misses, and Joshua, without even moving his feet, just plunges straight in with a right hand and nails Ngannou. It's positioning. That's the stuff that boxers do that most MMA fighters don't. And why I'm so excited when I talk about guys like Sean O'Malley and Ilia Topuria and Steve Erceg and others. Like, there are a lot of really impressive boxers in MMA now, and they just get to fucking run away with fights because their opponents don't recognize. Like, it's like being put in mount and not knowing that you're in trouble. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
They just don't have the sense for when a position is dangerous. And it shouldn't be that way. The thing with positioning in striking is that it should be fleeting, which is why you have to be so good to be a masterful positional striker in like boxing, because the other guy should be adjusting his feet instantly to prevent you from getting to an angle on him. But MMA fighters will just kind of forget about that aspect of striking and just square themselves up and just present a clear lane for the jab and other straight shots right down the pike. I just thought this was a great example of like why MMA fighters,
what a boxer should do.
Exactly.
Yes.
This is what boxing is. This is really the essence of boxing. Step to the side, line up the jab. And it allowed Joshua to completely dominate Ngannou.
I think someone said, like, obviously Ngannou, when he realized he couldn't really deal with the jab, he tried the MMA adaptation of going southpaw.
Yep.
And Joshua was suddenly like, I feel like I fought a good southpaw recently.
Twice.
Maybe an
actually.
okay one.
Yeah, twice even.
I'm okay at this now. Maybe you are not as good in southpaw as Alexander Usyk.
Yeah. And not only did the jab continue to land when he went southpaw, which must have been a very unpleasant realization for Ngannou, but Joshua was also able to do the classic thing and simply feint his way in and just drop a straight right hand on Ngannou before he could adjust his feet. Yeah, that is a profound refutation of MMA striking. I'm going to go southpaw so he can't jab me, and then he just nukes you the moment that you do that.
Yep.
Yeah. One thing,
but yeah, I was kind of, as much as I was glad to see Ngannou do well in the sport, I was glad to see Anthony Joshua, like,
me too,
be able to prove, because, we've mentioned a lot of times, he's in many ways not as physically gifted or, despite appearances, he's not as physically gifted or naturally inclined to boxing as like Tyson Fury is. So it was nice to see just him just doing the absolute basics.
Yeah.
And just, proving why they're the basics.
Yeah. I mean, I think Joshua has been getting better in this regard for some time now. I mean, we both, and Kyle, who I think maybe talked about both of the Usyk fights with us, we were all impressed with Joshua's performances, because we really saw Usyk as just a much more sophisticated and skillful boxer than Joshua. And not only did he have a good showing the first time, he made a lot of really smart adjustments for their rematch. He's just, Usyk is like an all-time great. And Joshua is simply a very good boxer. But these basics will continue to win him fights against actual boxers. Like, the game is more difficult because they know how to come up with answers that Ngannou simply doesn't have access to. But this was a really nice, classy, simple performance from Joshua, where this was like a celebration of like how boxing works. For that, I mean, I love this shit. So me watching it, I was like,
exactly the kind of stuff we kind of like.
Yeah,
it's someone steadily improving over time, focusing on the basics, showing why they're the basics and why they work.
I hope some MMA fighters will look at this and take something away from it. Folks, this is what good footwork looks like. Anthony Joshua didn't dance around. He didn't switch stance. He didn't cut a bunch of crazy angles. He took small steps and pivoted and lined up his jab over and over and over again. He constantly put himself in such a position that Francis felt a little too far away while Joshua felt perfectly in range. And that is what good footwork does. So, yeah, it's silly to think. I mean, without the Tyson Fury performance, say this was Francis Ngannou's first boxing match, it would be completely unremarkable, right?
Yep, be exactly what everyone expected.
But I am happy for Anthony Joshua that he was able to kind of get one over on Tyson Fury by just fighting a good, simple, smart fight.
Yeah, and he's been out there. He has been out there fighting the Alexander Usyks of the world.
Yeah.
Like twice.
Exactly.
He's been really trying to cement himself as the best in the world.
Yeah.
Whilst Fury has mostly been,
faffing around.
Fighting what's his face Wilder over and over again.
Yep.
And sniping from the sidelines.
Yep.
So yeah.
I have immense respect for Anthony Joshua, and I think it showed that he had immense respect for Francis Ngannou in how seriously he took this fight. He didn't try to style on him. He just outboxed him. Straight up.
Yep. He didn't try and style on him, and he didn't try and make the fight into... He didn't try and make the fight empty. It wasn't like, I'm going to win this.
No.
If I'm just far away from him.
Would have worked against him, right? Like, this is another thing that would be a very MMA fighter thing to do. Like, oh, this guy's dangerous and close, I'm going to stay away from him. In the meantime, I'm going to slowly encourage him more and more to come after me because I'm not actually doing anything threatening. I mean, on the subject of Rose Namajunas, I was just watching her fights with Jessica Andrade. And she's obviously much slicker than Andrade, and she's capable of, letting Andrade run forward and hitting her and then sidestepping out of the way. But clearly, in the second fight, the major strategic point that was emphasized by her corner was that they wanted her to either come forward or stand her ground. And that was going to result in much better evasive footwork than if she had gone in there thinking the way that, say, Ian Gary approached his last fight. Oh, I'm going to stay away from this person. I'm going to be slick. I'm going to dance around. Standing your ground and taking small steps will always make you a much harder target and will reduce your opponent's confidence in how easily they can actually pile up on you. So this was the simplest and the most brilliant approach Anthony Joshua could have taken. That's how you shut somebody out of a fight. You don't try to stay away from them. You try to constantly be a barrier to them getting close to you.
Yep. As you said, like O'Malley, it was just taking the initiative and keeping it.
Yep. Initiative is everything. So well done, Anthony Joshua. It seems kind of silly to be congratulating him for beating an MMA fighter, But hey, one of the other great heavyweights couldn't do it, and Joshua did it. It was classy, is what it was. A very classy performance.
Yep.
All right.
Good to see.
I agree. Let's take one more break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about some other stuff after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Marcin Tybura, Tai Tuivasa. We learned a lot from this fight.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For example, were you aware that Tai Tuivasa is bad at grappling?
No. It's a shocker.
Yeah, just, I'll give the UFC credit for this one. A very hollow kind of credit. There's certainly no other fight on this card more worthy of being the main event.
Is it, how many losses has Tai Tuivasa got in a row now?
I think that's 3, possibly 4.
That's 4.
4, yeah.
But yeah, given the absolute paucity of fighters on this card, you are correct.
I think that's the...
OSP, Kennedy, Zachukwu. OSP is pretty much in exactly the same position.
Yep. I think that is the most and perhaps only interesting angle from which to talk about this fight. What is up with MMA fighters and improvement? Like, as much as MMA remains a very difficult sport to predict, you can still do a pretty good job just sort of knowing exactly what to expect strategy-wise from a fighter. You know, like you and I fall flat when we just don't see that some weird thing happens or whatever. But the rule is, I saw a guy do this in 2 other fights, so like, yeah, he's just going to do that again. He's going to have the exact same weaknesses, and it's usually a pretty good read. Why has Tai Tuivasa not gotten better at all?
I think he's a bit of a gym nomad. Not because he's a bad person or anything. I think he honestly doesn't, again, I don't want to be dismissive of like the work that he puts in, because I might just be completely off base from this, but mostly I've heard about him going around to like different places like Tiger, one of the Tiger Muay Thai gyms, like a bunch of other places, obviously part of Mark Hunt's brief gym experiment, which I'm not sure is still going. But I think basically he likes to go places and then like spar with people.
You think that's what it is? Is that just a lot of MMA fighters don't really have like a team of people preparing them like boxers do?
Yeah. And I think if he has had one, it's not very good. I think mostly he goes to places which are largely striking specialist camps.
Yeah.
And he'll do a bit of, and he just does what he likes, which is strike with people. It's my sort of general theory. I could be wrong. I mean, there are many people who are just, they're just bad at grappling, and they're just always going to be bad at grappling. It's fine. There's lots of people who are just bad at striking. And yeah, that is my thoughts on Tai Tuivasa. And
but it's not just being bad at grappling. I mean, there's a point where Tai Tuivasa gets in on a double. And he doesn't have his hands connected. It's not, you're a heavyweight. Like, I know balance is the enemy of people who weigh more than 200 pounds, but he's not yet in a position where he really has to fight to keep his balance. Tybura doesn't do the Daniel Cormier thing that always works of make this big fat slob stand on one leg. Brilliant wrestling strategy at heavyweight, truly. He just falls down and tries to wrap up his massive tree trunk thighs. And Tai Tuivasa gets a bit of an underhook, and then he just starts whapping Tuivasa in the side of the head with like his knuckles, just wrapping him in the temple. He makes no effort to improve his position. Like, he doesn't know how. You can't tell me that's not something he could learn.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell me that he's physically incapable of learning how to pummel. Which is a warm-up in wrestling classes. It's a warm-up. It barely counts as a skill. It's something that you just get used to the motion and then you just do it. So what is it? Like, Tai Tuivasa seems like one of the most bleak representations of, I think, largely a sport-wide phenomenon, which is that there are just a lot of fighters who never, ever get better.
Why would he need to get better? He's lost 3 in a row, and they gave him a main event for it.
Well, yeah, I don't know, man. Just losing in the same way, over and over and over. And like, you know, he lost to Cyril Gahn too, which was a whole different area in which he also hasn't improved. Because this is the other thing. Say he's always going to be bad at grappling. Maybe there's some just psychological hitch there. I'm never going to fault MMA fighters for that, because people are weird and you have weird hang-ups. Like Michael Johnson. It's not like the guy doesn't have wrestling and grappling technique. It's that he hates it, and something in his brain misfires. And that seems like a difficult problem to solve. Cheeto Vera being a slow starter, and that seems like a difficult problem to solve. You know, that's not a technical issue per se. In part, technique failed him against Sean O'Malley, but also he has a unique brain, shall we say. But like Tai Tuivasa, if he's just focusing on striking, his striking hasn't gotten better either. He doesn't have any of that kind of positional know-how we were just talking about with Anthony Joshua. He can't box. It's just, it's disheartening and baffling to me when I see fighters like this because you know I love to see a fighter get better, but why does it feel like such a rarity in this sport?
Yeah, I was like Tai Tuivasa. I just don't think he's got the environment around him. I don't know whether that's part of his choice or whether it's whether it's just a confluence of factors that means. But I mean, it probably is his choice, because whatever happens, he could go somewhere else and learn better. Yeah, but I think the main weird thing about this one is that apparently, like, there were a bunch of people who thought that Tai Tuivasa was going to win this.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to brag about my fight picking ability, but I sort of picked Tuivasa just out of hand on this one.
Huh? Yeah, that was what was confusing me. People were like, I think it was the Aspinall fight, people were just like, oh, you just punched this guy out.
Yeah.
Not really how you beat Marcin Tybura. And also he's got a really well-defined, because he's been around for ages. He's fought tons of people, and he's exactly the kind of person they put into this kind of stuff. He's got a really well-defined level of, like, how good is your grappling?
Yep.
And your general ability to survive in grappling situations, like, level that he's established. And there's a waterline there, and below it are, like, Greg Hardy and Walt Harris.
Mm-hmm.
These are powerful men that do not grapple well.
Do not grapple, and in fact fold when somebody starts out grappling them.
And above it, just above it, is Derek Lewis. All you had to do is look at this one and be like, Tai Tuivasa, are you above the line or are you below it?
And he seemed pretty clearly below it.
Yep.
Yeah, that is a mystery.
It was a real two-true outcome one. It was, Tybura doing his classic thing of, like, swatting at punches and then getting hit.
Mm-hmm.
And then
what I've decided to start calling the Three Stooges eye poke defense to right hands.
Mm-hmm. And but then him getting some kind of grappling situation and immediately translating that into, like, a finish.
Mm-hmm. So, hey. I'm gonna jump past a bunch of other bullshit Brian Battle Angulosa was funny, I guess.
Battle was so mad afterwards.
He was so pissed that he poked Angulosa in the eye.
It's like, I'm just that dude. That's why these guys want to get out of there with me. It's like, you're not really, are you, Brian Battle?
He was crushing him. I mean, he really was dominating him.
Yeah.
That is true. And Brian Battle has certainly grown in confidence. It helps that he's
huge.
He is a massive welterweight.
Yep.
But
he's like the same size as Michael Bisping.
Yeah. He's certainly gaining confidence as a striker. He was putting together some decent combinations. And Losa is just an awkward, twitchy man until he kind of finds his rhythm. He just looked like he was really, really shook by the size difference. Like he didn't know how to get in safely. But yeah, it's always funny when two people have a fight and then the fight's over and then they try to fight each other.
Mm-hmm.
Always good. But I want to jump past that. I want to talk about Christian Rodriguez.
You've also jumped past OSP versus Kennedy Nzechukwu.
Don't make me. Okay, what do you have to say about that?
A
Yes.
lot of old fighters that are looking surprisingly rejuvenated lately. Like RDA and OSP and so on. I just don't know what to attribute it to. Couldn't think of anything that's changed in, for example, the drug testing regime of the UFC. But anyway, a surprisingly, like OSP afterwards, he was like, I noticed this guy's bad at moving backwards, so I thought I would try and push him backwards. And that's a shocking level of strategic, initiative from OSP, and B, also like just a damning indictment of
massive
light heavyweight.
Massive indictment of MMA fighters in general, because OSP at least understood guy who moves forward wins.
Mm-hmm.
That's rule number 1, baby. Unless you're fighting Sean O'Malley or one of these other.
It only took him
20
years of fighting in the what is nominally the best mixed martial arts organization in the world. And he was like, you know what? Then he had this eureka moment where he burst out of the bath and went running down the street naked, just shouting, I've realized it.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be walking around the edge of the cage. And occasionally, sort of with my dainty, delicate ankles buckling under me, I should walk forward sometimes.
Owen St. Preux, local man, aged 49, arrested this afternoon, quoted as saying, man who go forward win, man who go forward win, over and over as he was carted off to prison.
Yeah. So both, I just want to say that one. Both, good to see, heartening, and also deeply dispiriting on a deeper level, because it shouldn't be.
Yeah. And probably, I mean, I am kind of glad you brought it up. Probably a lot of these old dudes they're just on some good juice, right? That they don't even have to worry about cycling off. That seems probable, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're just getting away with it easier now. Yeah, I mean, I will say, like in RDA's case, it doesn't make up for age altogether. No. Whether that man was on some good juice or not, he still couldn't pull the triggers. He still didn't have the feel and the flow that he used to have as a younger fighter. And another much younger, though not by that much, but a significantly younger elite athlete was just able to pick up on his timing and beat him. OSP benefits from fighting at light heavyweight, where nobody can do that kind of thing. So, hey. But yeah, I want to talk about Christian Rodriguez, who, I don't know if I talked about him on this show yet. That I probably praised him after his fight with Cameron Simon.
Yeah, I think we talked about him after the Simon fight a bit, and also did we talk about him?
Possibly, he fought Raul Rosas, so I mean,
yeah, we thought about him after Raul Rosas, and I was like, he was actually good.
He was really good
in that fight. Like he showed like good takedown defense, and and like he looked like a genuinely much improved fighter from his previous performance.
Yeah, these are always the guys I like. Obviously, I'm a technique nerd first and foremost, and Christian Rodriguez is my new Jack Shore. Who, by the way, I would love to see Jack Shore back in the cage. What happened to him? Where'd he go? But, we were just talking about Anthony Joshua and the handful of fighters who understand like fundamental techniques in a way that a lot of MMA fighters don't. Christian Rodriguez has a really well-rounded understanding of like how important position is. He has a really well-rounded understanding of how important defense is. And this was basically a run back of his fight with Raul Rosas, except Isaac Dolgarian is much bigger and stronger than the 20-year-old Raul Rosas. He is also a far better wrestler. And frankly, Christian Rodriguez was kind of lucky to win this.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It was that close. I'm not upset that he won it because as much as Dolgarian...
like him more.
Well, of course. But also just the way the fight played out. Dolgarian was still all over him.
He won the moral victory, whatever happens.
Absolutely. He outlasted the guy with his defense and crushed him utterly in the final round. I think all the judges gave him a 10-8 for that, actually. Because I think he picked up like a 28-27, 2 28-27 scorecards. That implies a 10-8, right?
Yeah.
Right? I'm not good at math.
No, that's something. Wait a minute. No, it's good. He got 10-8'd in round 1.
Oh, and then they gave him the last 2 rounds. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, which also fair enough because he just got, completely out wrestled. And a good thing about Dolgarian's wrestling, at least until he started to completely gas, which I kind of expected because he's a guy who's never been outside the first round. Is that he didn't turn into purely a positional wrestler until he started to gas. When he felt fresh, he was doing damage. So I think that's a perfectly warranted 10-8 in the first round. But yeah, I just love when defense is a decisive factor in winning a fight. Defense and like positional improvement, because the key to Rodriguez having any hopes at all here was not only to make it difficult to get takedowns, but to continually scramble and fight to improve his position and get back to his feet. And it was exhausting for both of them, clearly. But Dolgarian is so used to overwhelming people. It just seemed like a very valuable piece of experience for him. Because clearly this has never happened, and he was never going to know it was possible this could happen until it did. That somebody could just actually get overwhelmed by him, but not get destroyed and still be there. And he just had no idea what would happen if they managed to survive. And what happened is, and this is a huge testament to how good Dolgarian clearly is, they barely sort of kind of win.
Yep.
So I loved this fight. I mean, I thought it was not just because I like Rodriguez and I was happy to see him win in, I think, an unlikely style matchup in a lot of ways, but I just thought it was really fun. Kind of a little bit of everything. Fight went everywhere, and it was just pretty nonstop, even though a lot of it was just scrambling and takedown defense. These dudes were pushing each other all the way for the entire fight. I had a great time.
Yeah. I mean, even though Dolgarian was completely gassed in round 3, I thought he was toast.
Oh, yeah.
When Rodriguez, back-mounted him. So, yeah, credit to him for scrambling out of it and staying alive.
Even before that, there was the takedown. He shot, and finally, Rodriguez was just stuffing them outright. Sprawl and just pancaking Dolgarian on the ground. And there was one of those very early in round 3 where he just stayed on his knees and covered his face. He was too exhausted to He knew he was too exhausted to actually adjust. He was just like, please don't hit me, please don't hit me. And Rodriguez just booted him in the ribs with a soccer kick. I thought Dolgarian was about to get finished. That was horrible, horrible body language. And he still held it together and made it through round 3. And much as I was not upset that Rodriguez won, I would not have been neither surprised nor upset if they had given Dolgarian the decision. He was really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I think the correct score is probably 28-27 Bulgarian, because I think that's dueling 10-8s, that scorecard, right?
Yeah.
Because both guys have to have lost one from the traditional like point score of a 29-28.
Honestly,
so yeah, it's 10-8, whatever. So they scored both the first and the third rounds as 10-8s, which is actually good judging.
It is. Mm-hmm. And then round 2.
The second round was
if they called round 2
close, but it is also the kind of round that again I would always expect.
Yeah.
Bulgarian to win, and I think you should, if you are Christian Rodriguez, expect Bulgarian to win that too.
I think he did. I think his corner told him, they were like, that was closer, but you need to finish him. I think they gave him the right advice. I would have absolutely been certain that I lost that round. I mean, I think this never happens, but if they'd called it a 10-10, I would have been like, oh, okay. This was a draw fight.
Let's not get crazy with the good, with the good applicable score.
There is no 10-10. We actually know they are instructed not to score draw rounds. It just doesn't happen. Was there even? Let me check real quick, since she's on this episode. Rose Namajunas, MMA decisions. Was there a 10-10 round in her rematch with Carla Esparza?
No. Every round was scored.
Yep. Now, if that fight doesn't have a single 10-10 round, 10-10 rounds do not exist in this sport. They will never be scored.
Yep. Should be, though.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, this was a draw. 10-8, 10-10, 8-10. That should have been the scorecard. But I came away from it really impressed with both guys. I think it's pretty obvious that Christian Rodriguez, as a solid athlete, but not a Bulgarian type athlete, he is going to struggle with bigger, stronger dudes as long as he's at featherweight. And it seems like he has to be at featherweight because he basically got kicked out of 135 by failing to make the limit. But it also just shows how important technique really is. That he was only able to get to the point where he could dominate the final round of this fight and net himself a win, because he is technically a very sound fighter and just a very disciplined and mature fighter who is willing to accept the fight being difficult and uncomfortable and stay solid. Sometimes that's what it takes. When somebody's overwhelming you, it's not the time to try to beat them. Sometimes there is a situation when you just got to survive and not make big mistakes and hope that you get your chances later. That is sometimes the smart call. And whether it's Dustin Poirier outlasting Benoit Saint-Denis at UFC 299 or a fight like this, you can really see the value in just being defensively sound.
I think Rodriguez has probably had a bit of a benefit of having fighters who are general, where a lot of them are kind of wrestling focused and they sort of fall apart against his general well-roundedness.
Exactly.
That's his. He's probably going to have some big trouble if he comes up against a disciplined outside striker. I mean, which there are many in that division. But he's cool. I've definitely enjoyed just seeing him improve, and he's also really young.
He is.
It's like he's 26.
Yeah, he's young, but he's had a really full career. Like you can see, he's got a lot of valuable experience that he has continually improved as a result of. He's also probably going to struggle with just wrestlers who don't fall apart, right? Like, imagine him fighting Movsar Evloev.
Yeah,
that would be bad.
Yes,
but hey, I enjoy watching these guys. I love my technicians. And I love even more when they have such faith in their technique that they can weather a storm, and still be there to try to win late. I always enjoy that. Anything else on this card before we close out the show?
No.
Great. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. You find us on Twitter at Eva Greg Jackson, at Boxing Bush. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/heavyhands. And please support me over on my Substack, facepunching.substack.com. Of course, I had my big in-depth Sean O'Malley breakdown with lots of GIFs with freeze frames and notes on them. Yes, I'm behind a paywall, so I feel safe using GIFs again. And if you require me to start pronouncing it GIF in order to support me financially, go fuck yourself.
I was just going to say, if you could turn that into like a stretch goal.
I'll never change. So check that out, and I just put up a Steve Ursig breakdown. If you want to know if it feels worthwhile or not to subscribe and support me financially, I will let you know that my breakdown of Steve Ursig's knockout of Matt Schnell is completely free to read, so you do not even have to subscribe to check that one out. Both of those articles that really touch on how initiative is gained and then used to either win rounds or set up a crushing knockout. I will also have a Rose Namajunas breakdown coming out this week before her fight with Amanda Hebush. So lots of stuff going up at facepunching.substack.com. I appreciate your support, and at least check out the free stuff. It's worth reading. It's pretty good. All right. We'll be back next week. God, I hope something happens that's interesting on the Hebush Namajunas card, because the week following, you know what? The one following actually has a much better undercard, which isn't saying a ton, but it has another women's flyweight contender main event, an interesting fight. And hey, Vicente Luque, Joaquin Buckley. That's all I need to see. It's better than this.
It's better than this.
We'll talk to you about that next week. Until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.